Thank you for tuning in to the Her Earth Medicine podcast. My name is Sandy Ross and I am your host. I am a naturopath and practitioner of traditional Chinese medicine, and I have been in practice for 14 years. In this podcast episode today, I am talking to one of my old lecturers from college on flower essences. So this podcast will be so good for graduates, even students of naturopathic medicine or any modality really, and great for parents to listen into. So I hope you enjoy. Let's dive in and talk flower essences with Kayla Mcdonnell. So today I'm very excited to introduce to the Her Earth Medicine podcast one of my lecturers from Flower Essences. Back in the day, I think it was back in the 2006-7-ish, Kayla Mcdonnell. Welcome to the podcast, Kayla.
Good morning, Sandy. It's so lovely to see you and be here again. It's fantastic.
So excited to have you on. And I think this is going to be a great episode for so many like naturopaths or mothers that want to tune in and listen and learn more about flower essences. I just remember you being such a wealth of knowledge and pure energy back in the day. So I'm so grateful you've taken the time out to come and chat.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
So I think we should start by just basically, well, you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your history with working with flower essences, and then we'll dive into what they actually are and how they came about.
Okay, fantastic. Well, actually, I had an amazing flower essence lecturer myself. Her name was Annie Meredith, and I was never somebody who actually had a hero or a heroine or anybody up on my wall, and yet when I met this lady in her classes, she was just somebody that I wanted to be like. She was absolutely amazing. So I completely give her the I can't think of the word, Sandy. Oh my goodness.
She inspired you.
Thank you. That's the inspiration word. Thank you. Completely was inspired by this beautiful lady to actually teach and love flower essences. So I'm glad that you found that I was full of energy as well, because that's what that she was like. Flower essences are just absolutely amazing. They are fantastic, I think, because they are so simple. They're simple to use for natural medicine practitioners who learn about their detail and learn how to actually prescribe them, which is tricky to do. But they're also fantastic and safe to be able to have in the house and to use them as a mum, as a dad, even as your own child can use them themselves once they start to become aware of their own feelings. And that's what's fantastic about them in their simplicity.
Okay, awesome. So how did they come about? Like, where did the creation of flower essence start?
Okay, great question. So flower essences that we use at the moment, we've got, there's worldwide essences. We use the Australian bush flower essences primarily, as well as the English essences, which are known as the bark remedies. So a lot of people have probably heard of rescue remedy. That's very widely used. You can even buy it at Coles. You can use it as drops. You can use it as lozenges. There's so many great ways. There's creams, there's sleep remedies for it. So there's a lot of knowledge around the rescue remedy area. But the actual Australian bush flower essences are quite specific for Australians as such, because they resonate with us specifically. The interesting thing is that flower essences themselves have been used for hundreds, thousands of years. They Egyptians, for example, they used to collect the dew off flowers and actually utilise that as a remedy for making their people well. There's not as much information that we have from there, but when Edward Bach started to find and create them again, they were actually known as herbal remedies initially, but obviously we now know them as the flower remedies. So so what I was going to say was that the actual use of them back in the 1930s, we have a very different area of time around then. And then the 1980s, late 1980s is when the bush flowers came about. So we've got about a 50-year gap between the two that we're specifically using at the moment. So who knows, there might be someone that actually creates a new lot back, in the early, I don't know, in the next couple of 20 years or so, we might get some other essences that actually resonate with our world, the way that we're heading.
How do they actually get made?
So at the moment, what we do is you can collect the actual flowers, and this is what you can actually make them yourself at home. You might remember your assessment that you had to do, your assignment. I do, yeah. That's a lot of fun. You actually can, and they're collected, and then they're actually steeped in water, and then you actually add alcohol to that. The reason why it's alcohol is it's a preserving aspect. If you're making your own, you don't wish to actually add alcohol, you can do apple cider vinegar as well. So that's no problem whatsoever. But it's just to preserve them as such. They're then put into little bottles and distributed retail-wise. If you make your own, just put it into a little dropper bottle and you can use it from there.
So beautiful, isn't it? Like, if you think of the way it's created, it's just beautiful. What a beautiful medicine coming from the essence of a flower.
Absolutely. Just using the sun. You can use the full moon as well if you want the yin energy of the flower to come through. We use this and Ian White, who created the bushflower essences, he used this with something like his very strong yang flowers, like dog rose of the wild forces. So he will put that in and steep it out under a full moon. But usually they're steeped in the sunlight and utilised so that we can use the yang energy.
Okay. I love that there's a little bit of Chinese medicine coming into it as well.
Oh, of course.
Okay, so maybe let's start. I'd love to give some listeners some guidance for emotional health, because I think, and by the way, everyone, we're freestyling this, so we have no planned agenda. We're just going to go with the flow. So it might go different ways, and that is totally okay. But where I'd like to maybe start is, so I know a lot of the new grads use a herbal tincture, and they might be putting in some of the flower essences in top of the herbal tincture just for the emotional stuff. So they might be working on hormones or adrenals or gut or something within that herbal. And then someone has a little bit of anxiety or irritability, and they're picking an essence and adding it to there. Shall we go down the emotional rabbit hole and go through some of the emotions, or even how to use them correctly if people are doing that sort of prescription?
Absolutely. Let's do that. That's a great rabbit hole to go down. Okay, let's talk about the actual herbals and how to use it that way. So on a normal prescription, you're popping in, or you're asking for 7 drops, okay, from the original bottle. So the 7 drops is a mixture of the physical and the emotional numbers, so numerology-wise. So you've got your 4 drops for your physical and your 3 for your emotional, and that's why the 7 drops for the Australian bushflower essences. So if you are going to add them to your herbs, you certainly can go the 7 drops completely. You could also, if you were specifically, say, for example, using a anti-inflammatory herb, you could just use the 4 drops to heighten the physical aspect of it. If you were using an anxiolytic herb, then you could definitely use the 3 drops to heighten the emotional awareness and calming for that particular remedy. The aspect of the emotional, this is very tricky sometimes for practitioners. Yes, we are learning most definitely the detail of the essences and what they are used for. However, we do have to always be very aware of our filter of whether we're prescribing because we're projecting our perception of what we're hearing from our clients. So we do need to make sure we're very aware of is it a reaction that our clients are actually talking about, or is it the actual trigger that's underlying it? Probably best if I explain that through even a child's behaviour. So children are quite beautiful with their reactions. They're very pure in their reactions. So they can get say, for example, frustrated or what we could consider angry quite quickly, and it's all-encompassing for these little people. But it may not actually be anger as such that they need to be remedied with, if that makes sense. So the essence doesn't necessarily need to be, say, mountain devil. It might actually be that once everything is calmed down, that you may find that the real trigger was that the little one felt rejected, felt left out. And so the actual remedy would have been Illawarra flame tree to actually give. Okay, so sometimes you can give, and I have done this in the past, if the child is extremely young and therefore hasn't got that ability to be able to speak with you even in a calm zone, you can put the mountain devil in, maybe get that calmness to come through, and then also put in what you think may have been the actual trigger. So as a parent, you understand what possibly came about before the anger, and so therefore when you look back you can see that this particular little one wasn't able to get their way, felt that they were being rejected, and so had the no word said to them, which of course we know little people don't always like, and so therefore you can put in the Illawarra flame tree as well. So those two things happen together.
So you're treating both the deficiency and the excess in the same.
Exactly, yes. So deficiency excess for the TCM, and for us it's for me when I'm doing that, it's the trigger and the reaction.
Trigger and the reaction. And how many remedies can you mix into a bottle?
Great question. Absolutely great question. There is so many different answers to this with practitioners, who really like to use the flower essences. For me personally, I don't like any more in the bush flower essences. I don't like any more than 5. There is not any particular reason why I only use that number, but that is my maximum number. My preference is always to try and get 3 in. And the reason why I do like that number is because the Trinity is very, very powerful, that number. We know that triangles are the most powerful shape, and so they obviously have the 3 points. And also the 3 is the emotional number. So that's what I like to do. But there are practitioners that will put in 7, 8, 9 essences as well.
Okay. No, I love that, the trinity of it. That's beautiful. And I think, obviously if there's less is more in a way too. It's going to be more potent and effective, especially if you can get the right remedies.
Yeah, well, then that's the point, Sandy, is if you can actually really use your questions correctly, then you should be able to come down to what the main triggers are. And then as practitioners are taught, we're taught to actually prioritise. So, you make sure that you've got, you're using what you need to, I suppose, get the depth of that understanding for that person, so that they are healing as quickly as possible.
Okay, so what did you use the words? So you said trigger, and what was the other word?
Reaction.
Trigger and reaction. Okay, I love that. So I'm just going to ask you some emotional questions directly, because I reckon it will be great for people to go, oh, wow, I'm going to use that. So in terms of anger, can we start there with some essences, and it could be for a child or it could be for an adult as well. And if there is a difference between how we dose and prescribe and the remedies, then go into that. But let's start with anger.
Okay, can I just to go back and go, there is no difference with regards to how we actually prescribe. So dosing is the exact same, and that basically is that if you're making a mix for yourself, then you are looking at 7 drops in the morning and 7 drops at night. Let's just quickly talk about that before we go to anger. Yeah. Is that okay? Let's talk about the fact that you're actually going to take them as soon as you wake up in the morning. So before you actually touch that phone, and when you go to just before you go to sleep at night. So just before you turn off that light and the eyes shut down, that's when you actually want to take it. The reason why is because that's when your conscious level and your subconscious level are at their closest. Okay, so they're doing their swap over. So that time is when, if you take your essences at that time, it's a really powerful zone of being able to not only take it consciously throughout the day, but then take it into your dream world at night as well to make the changes. So we don't do it any differently. So children are 7 drops, adults are 7 drops. Okay. All right, let's go to anger. Fantastic. All right, so anger primarily is mountain devil. That is the general anger zone.
And you're talking bush flower, aren't you?
The bush flower essences, yep. So the Ian White Australian bush flower essences. The other anger one that you would probably also look to is Dagger Hakea. Now, the difference between Mountain Devil and Dagger Hakea is quite purely family orientated. So if it's more family and it's the anger is often as deep-seated resentment. So if you've got patterns of anger, so if you're going, say, to family celebration or family time, and then you come back and you're feeling angry and you always are feeling that sort of anger and it's the same pattern, it's with the same people, it's very likely to be Dagger Hakea rather than Mountain Devil, okay, because it's what we call the cold ashes of burnt out anger, which is known as resentment. So that's Dagger Hakea in that way.
So would that be used a lot more? Sense? Yeah, absolutely. That I feel like that might be used a bit more amongst adults because they're going to have more of the resentment with the anger. You know, children have anger, but like you said, there's other drivers to little one's anger. So definitely a way to remember it for me would be that's more of an adult dose, but not necessarily.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. It will be because it is more patternized in that way, and so it's a learned anger, or as I said before, burnt out anger, and little ones don't have burnt out anger.
I hope you're enjoying this podcast episode. I just wanted to interrupt for just a minute to announce that I am available for consultation online worldwide. You can book a consultation with me at herearthmedicine.com. I also have my children's health course, which is a course on Chinese medicine and naturopathic medicine from postnatal health up to young teens on raising children naturally. You can check that out also at my website, herearthmedicine.com, and use the code BLOOM for $50 off that one. The last thing I want to let you know is my Shoni Shin tools, which are pediatric wellness tools. This is something you can add into your daily wellness routine for your children. You can do it before bed or after a bath, and it basically helps to build immunity, improve digestion, and just help wellness all around with your children. They are great and kids absolutely love them. So if you'd like to find out more, check them out at herearthmedicine.com. Back to the podcast. Enjoy it. So what about Mountain Devil? What are some characteristics of that?
So the anger aspect on that is usually if you're angry, say, at someone at work or with work in general. It could be even just angry with your life at that point in time for the plan not working, for things not actually going your way in that way. Okay, you can certainly put that in as one of them. Okay.
Anything else you want to touch on anger, or is those are two main?
So anger obviously is the top of the tree with regards to there's frustration and then impatience and irritation, etc. So just, I suppose, for parents that are listening, but also for practitioners when they're questioning, to just make sure that when somebody says they're angry about something, to don't just take that at face value as such. Really make sure that you question through that. For example, like, when are you angry? Like, when was the last time you were angry? What was actually happening at the same time? Look for those triggers so that you then know what else you can pop into the actual essence remedy as well.
Okay. And so what about impatience?
So impatience is a big one, obviously, and we do get that with little people as well. So impatience for us in the Australian bushflower essences is there's not a specific one like there is in the bark, and it's actually called impatiens in the bark, so it's really easy to remember as well. But in the bushflower essences, we actually use black-eyed Susan, which we actually know as the stress remedy, but he's popped the stress and the impatience together as such, which is fair enough as well, because often when we are impatient, when we feel impatient, the impatience can come from, again, as we said, that stress of not getting your own way, of not having something work to plan. So we often, the stress within us actually rises. So that's why the black-eyed Susan one is used in the bush flowers for the impatience aspect. But again, finding out exactly what it is that is surrounding you when you're feeling impatient, whether it's you're feeling that life is not fair impatience, then you'll also be using Southern Cross as well. Okay, so there's lots of different aspects of how to mix the actual essences based on what you are feeling, and that's the detail that practitioners learn. As far as home remedies for parents, you can go into the retail shops, and then they will actually have up on their listing the emotions that you are looking to get a remedy for. The other interesting part I'll mention here with the Australian bushflower essences is that you don't usually buy them separately like you can with the bark flowers. You can really only get them as a combination flower essence remedy, which in a way is a good idea as well. It saves you having to think about what to put in. So you're actually just going for the emotion, if that makes sense. So you're actually buying the emotional reaction and or the trigger that you've actually been questioning yourself about.
Yeah, it's great. Otherwise, if they're unsure, they can always reach out to a practitioner.
Absolutely. Practitioners are definitely taught in good detail all the individual essences, and so they can make a remedy that's absolutely specific for you, and that's a great thing to do.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've touched on anger and impatience. Can we touch on irritability?
Okay, so irritability aspect is probably still that one underneath, and you would still look at things like what is happening when you are actually irritable. So the black-eyed Susan, because there's stress that comes in with it. The one that I can mention here that is really good for all of these ones that we've just talked about on the anger spectrum is Angel's Word or Angel's Sword. And interestingly, I don't know if you remember, Sandy, but when we used to learn about this one, I used to get you to read the word firstly, because everybody reads the word differently. So if you read it as Angel's Sword, that means that you need that specific essence at that time to cut through what you're feeling and to release those particular feelings. And that's why it's a good one to mention at this point in time, because we're trying to cut through the stress, cut through the actual triggers of those stresses. So Angel's Sword is a really good one for that. If you read it as Angel's Word, it's actually, you can use it quite specifically in the dream state time as well. So if you do have it is in your remedy, then it's a really good one, because often when we're angry in our world or impatient at having something to be done or that you want it done now, so many young people, especially I've got teens at the moment that are quite impatient to be probably early 20s or mid-20s in their ability to do things. That type of that type of impatience and irritability, if you give angels word at that point in time, they work it out and they work through it in their dream state. And that's a really lovely way to actually to work through your feelings as such in that subconscious area. Because often dreams, when they're spoken about to parents or to friends, or even just if they're looking at them themselves, they're a little less confronting because they don't feel as real. But again, as a practitioner, if you're dealing with someone with a dream state that's talking to you about their irritability, you can actually guide them through and allow them to actually make the changes in that dream so they can go back into that dream, or you can take them into a slight meditation and actually get them back into that dream state. And then you can utilize get them to actually fix, if that makes sense, fix their actual world the way they want it in that subconscious zone. And the cool part about that is while you can do that, if you've got your essences available, you can actually either spray an essence around at that time while you're doing that sort of meditation state, or you can actually put it on their wrist and get them just to rub their wrists together, even pop it under in like at their neck area. And while they go into that state, they can actually be calmer and to help them move through it. Just another different way to do it.
Wow, I love that. How amazing is that, though, the ability to go into our dream state to heal? That's just...
Yes.
Yeah.
And kids are really good with that too, Sandy. They really they enjoy sort of imagination play and imagination thinking. So even if it doesn't need to be like a subconscious understanding like we would do probably for an adult, but even just with imaginary play that you can do with your child, if they're having issues, anxiety, etc., that sort of thing, you can actually talk them through and role play it and role model it through with them, like pretend they're already doing it, like when they play going to the shops or going to the doctors, or that's giving their baby a bath and that sort of thing. All those sorts of imaginary plays, you can spray the essence around the room that the kids are in and walk them through how to actually, go up and ask somebody for help, or how to actually speak to your friends or speak to a teacher, whatever is the issue that they're having at that point in time.
Yeah, that's such a great way to do it. And I love that you can spray it around, you can add it to the wrist. Like, there's so many ways of actually utilizing the essences. I mean, they don't taste bad either, so kids can absolutely take them directly. They have a little alcohol-y taste, but they're absolutely fine to dose. But that's just great that there's so many ways to utilize them, and so powerful.
Absolutely. And as we said before, you don't need to use the alcohol. You can do the apple cider vinegar, or even if that taste is for a really little one, or if you don't want to give that, keep the essence pure. Just put it in the fridge. And then when you need it, because that preserves it, the cold preserves it, and then when you need it, you can just take it out and use it or spray it around, then pop it back in the fridge again.
Okay, awesome. Now, we've covered irritability. I would love to maybe hear about some of the essences for frustration.
Okay, so the frustration essences, again, we're still probably on those same essences because we're on the same spectrum, if that makes sense. So again, I'm sort of repeating myself. You have to then find what was actually creating the frustration. So maybe this might be a time I'll just cruise and just take a little side pathway where we might actually go down the mother-father issues and talk about bottle brush and red helmet orchid, because that often is a lot of people's frustrations, children as well. If we look at because otherwise, I'll just go back, otherwise we're looking at the spectrum constantly of your frustration, irritability, anger, etc.
Interlinked.
We've sort of done we've done
they're all the wood element in Chinese medicine, but they have their branches, don't they? So go on.
There we go. Absolutely. Fantastic. So let's look at bottle brush and red helmet orchid. These ones so the bottle brush is quite specifically for mother issues as such. Now, the mother issues that you may have could be your own issues as a mother. You may feel that you're not actually connecting or bonding with your children for whatever reason. Let's not even worry about the reasons at this point in time. If you just want to, you might not even know them. So you just know that you're not bonding it the way that you would like to bond. So bottle brush, for example, is a fantastic essence to actually use for that. On the flip side of that, if you have mother issues with your own mother, so that frustration that we were talking about before, and it's cyclic, so that would be one of those times when your client comes in, oh, I'm frustrated, and you're asking why. You find out it's about the mother, so then you'll add the bottle brush to say something like your black-eyed Susan for stress. Okay, so that's how you do it. Your red helmet orchid, which is the father issues essence, you would use it for those same reasons as a father if you don't feel like you're actually doing the right thing according to your expectations, or whether you've got cyclic father issues as well. I'm going to add, while we're talking about that at the moment, if that's all right, I'm going to add the essence Boab as well, because Boab is a really important essence. It's for ancestral disconnections, or breaking the ancestral connection or the DNA structures in that sort of way. It's really important. It's a lovely story of how boabs are used in the Aboriginal history or culture, in the fact that the birthing is done under a boab tree, and with the boab flowers, the mother actually births into boab flowers. So my children actually had boab and fringe violet. We'll talk about fringe violet at the end. Popped straight onto the top of their head, their crown chakra, as soon as they were out. The umbilical cord was cut. That was popped straight on top of their crown chakra, just to help to release their ancestral connection.
Oh, wow.
So that they can, and also the shock of actually being here, which was the fringe violet, and then to pave their own pathway, utilising the lessons that us as their ancestors and the people that have come before them can actually give to them as such. So Boab's a lovely, lovely essence, and I use it quite predominantly for those cyclic behaviours when you might have that emotion of frustration, anger towards a family member, quite specifically, let's just say mother. Then we can actually put in the bottle brush. We can pop in the boab as well, okay? And that will help to change that whole script that you might have, not only ancestrally but obviously consciously as well.
Wow, that's so great and so easy.
So easy, absolutely. It's just about self-awareness.
So I love that. So we've got the bottle brush more for mother issues, the red helmet orchid for the father or male issues. Then we can add in the boab for the ancestral disillusions and whatever else can be passed on through our genetics.
Absolutely.
And
the red helmet orchid, can we go back there?
Yes.
Great. Let's say, okay, we're going to take another step. So red helmet orchid we would also utilise for young females whose menstruation cycle may not be actually regulating correctly. Now, we know that once menarche happens, which is the first menses, first period, then we know that it takes about 18 months for both ovaries to actually balance out correctly, okay? Post that, if the imbalance is still there, then menstruation is actually what we look at as a male, even though it's female that is obviously having the menstruation, but we look at any issues to be related to the male. So there's lots of reasons that could be related to the male, that the actual female teenager might not feel that the male is there for them. He may actually not be there for them, actually physically there. So any of those sorts of issues can actually disrupt a Menzies cycle. And so giving red helmet orchid can actually bring those issues to a conscious level so that you can discuss them, and also on that physical level help to make the energetic changes that are required in amongst all the other things that they will be doing with their food, as well as with any herbal changes that they might be using at that point in time.
Oh, wow, that's so awesome, so useful. Yeah, and I love that there's a connection there between, I guess, the yang aspect of how that can influence the menses. So cool.
Absolutely.
Didn't know about that one, so that's so good to know, because I work a lot with, kids and teens and whatnot, and that's a big one that we can just add in, and that's so simple to help support them. And there's so many big emotions that come with all those issues. So, yeah, so that was the red helmet orchid.
And it's really good. I often used it in chase tree, because if you have PCOD, then that chase tree is one of the best things, as you know, for getting that regulated. And adding the red helmet orchid into that is just a lovely little combination strengthener.
Okay. And could that be obviously used with menstruation issues later on in life, like if it's still happening in their 20s, or you just mentioned about
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly enough, because of that male connection, that you might even have, for example, the child's father may actually be there through the teens, and then for whatever reason he's not there. And so the actual menstrual cycle may actually start to disrupt later on, as you said, in the 20s. Okay. It may also be that after having children, the cycle may actually disrupt. As a practitioner, just be aware of that. That also can tell you that there are other things happening in that person's life. So you may want to delve a little deeper into why that is happening.
But no, it's good to know. So it's not limited to just the onset of menstruation.
Absolutely.
Okay, yes. Awesome. Okay, so I think we were segueing from irritability with that one. Shall we come back to...
Let's go to shock. Shall we go to
shock, yes.
Let's go to shock. Okay, so shock, which is fringe violet in the Australian bush flower essences, and Star of Bethlehem in the bark flowers, which of course you'll find in Rescue Remedy in the bark flowers, but you'll also find the fringe violet in Emergency Essence in the Australian bush flower essences. Fringe violet is pretty much, once you buy yourself a Australian bush flower set, a flower essences set, you may as well just order another 3 fringe violet essences along with it as well. It is the one that you will use constantly. And the reason why is it's quite specifically for shock. And what I'd love all your practitioners that are listening to understand about their clients is that for the unwellness to have occurred in the first place, there will have been a shock start somewhere. So that base trigger will be a shock. So even though you may be seeing someone with an autoimmune disease, or you may be seeing someone who's had these signs and symptoms for 20 or so years and nothing else has worked, go all the way back and there will be a shock of some description in there. And it can be as the birth. As I said, I gave my children fringe violet and boab when they came out, so when they were birthed. So once that shock, if that's all it is, oh my gosh, here I am conscious here, that is worthy of giving fringe violet. So fringe violet really should be pretty much in every essence that you pop in, at least for that first essence. Okay. And then as you do other essences down the track, the shock will have come out. I do really want to make this point about shock, if I can, please. Shock actually reverberates through every cell of your body. So if you're, say, let's use a very widely understood shock, which is a car accident, okay? If you've been in a car accident, there is a shock. Even hearing about a loved one being in a car accident, there is a shock. So what happens is that shock of hearing that, or that shock of being in that car accident, the cells actually they almost close up to stop anything else happening, because you go into a fight or flight response, okay? And we go into fight or flight so that we can actually deal with the situation. We don't want to be digesting, so everything just closes up. If we don't actually dissipate the shock, which, in psychology, they use debriefing systems to actually speak about it, but there's a lot of people who don't like to speak about it or can't speak about it initially, okay? And we can go into PTSD in a little bit with that. That part of it is where fringe violet works its best. It will start to open up that cellular structure so that not only nutrition will go in, but also breath will go in, as well as, and then you'll find that people will be able to speak. If that doesn't happen, and again, this is a practitioner thing quite specifically, if that doesn't happen, within about 12 to 18 months, that is when someone will actually develop the symptoms of unwellness from the shock. Mm-hmm. So about that 12 to 18 months later. So if you've got someone that's come in saying, headaches, blah, 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 the most important question is, when were you last well? When did that start to happen? Then go back another year and find out what was happening about another year ago before that, if that makes sense. Yes.
Totally.
Great, excellent. Yes. So fringe violet's really, really important. Just as I was onto that, the PTSD one, because that's really shock that has not been open and keeps opening and closing all the time. Okay, we do have a specific remedy for that, essence for that, and that is called Dog Rose of the Wild Forces. We can utilise it as well. It's got an acute use, and that's for extreme overwhelm. I'm completely out of control. And if you read about PTSD, so people who have PTSD, if you read about their particular feelings and their issues and their thing and how it all comes over them, it overwhelms them. That is what actually happens. They're completely out of control. They've got no control over their conscious being at that point in time a lot of the time. So Dog Rose of the Wild Forces is just absolutely quite specific for them.
Okay, awesome. I'm writing so many notes. I can obviously listen back into this, but I've got them there. So I just want to...
Sandy, you're right.
So one question. So you're suggesting that we add fringe violet perhaps to the first remedy we give everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Without a doubt, they should always have fringe violet in there, and that for when that first consultation with you. And let me just say, even if you're a herbalist and you just want to give them a herb and then go through your notes so that you can definitely get the right essence out, put your fringe violet into your herb as well. Just pop it in there, whatever their first thing is, whatever their first prescription is, make sure that somehow they've got fringe violet. If you're a massage therapist, pop it into, and it's their first visit, pop it into with your oil. If it's a child and you're not giving them anything because you're choosing to do their food, you're a nutritionist primarily, or even as a naturopath, you're choosing to use food more, just pop the fringe violet just on their wrist, and they can walk out with it just there. It's still on them as such.
So good. Okay. Wow, so much information. It's going to be... Yeah, I'm loving this.
Oh,
I'm so glad we got you on. Thank you. Okay, what about sadness?
Okay, that's a good one. Again, it's got the spectrum,
yes,
in that sort of way. Okay, we've got extremely deep sadness that people hide away. So we'll start right down at that level there, and that's Sturt Desert Pea. Okay, and Sturt Desert Pea is, imagine a pea literally within your body. It's not only extremely hard to find, as the fairy tale tells you, but also it's very, very tight, and it's very hard to actually open up. So Sturt Desert Pea allows, we just talked about shock of opening up, Sturt Desert Pea allows for one to actually open up that deep-seated sadness. Obviously, that is going to overwhelm somebody if it is not done correctly. So if you, as a practitioner, are going to use Sturt Desert Pea, please be aware that you need to have done some pre-work with your client with regards to strategies on how to manage that sadness in general, but also where this deep-seated sadness possibly might be coming from. If you're going to use Sturt Desert Pea as a home remedy, again, it'll be more in a mix essence if you buy it retail. So there will be surrounding buffers, essences, so you won't really have to worry too much about it. But that being said, if you do use a mixture and it is in there and you do have a deep-seated sadness that you may not actually have been aware of, it may come up, and that's where it's actually from. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What are some of the buffer remedies for?
So fringe violet will be one of them because of the shock of actually that release. Okay. It will depend on what the actual trigger is as such, because if the deep-seated aspect is abandonment or rejection, then we're looking at ill or a flame tree, okay? If it is quite ancestral, as we talked about, it'll be bottle hab that we need to use. Mother issues we've mentioned with the bottle brush, father issues with the red helmet orchid. It could be just self-confidence issues that just you've been pushed down a lot, so it might be 5 corners that you actually need to pop in there as well. So there's lots of different reasons for it to be there. Dagahakea, which you mentioned before, with that resentment aspect, and that can be family. It can also be, just relationship resentment. If you've got that, if you didn't have, for example, a great relationship, an adult relationship or marriage, then that can actually be utilised for that as well. So Dagahakea can be part of that releasing of that deep-seated sadness.
Okay, great. And I love how you can obviously it's a little bit different to homeopathics where we're kind of going with one remedy more so. Yes. The combination is supportive, so it's really nice to have all those little aspects you can throw in together. Anything else, any other remedies on sadness?
Yes.
So that's the deep-seated.
Yes, let's go to red frangipani. Okay, so this one is for loss. So we all experience loss throughout our life. We have to. That's just part of what life is. But red frangipani is a really lovely acute remedy for all loss. So for your children, they might lose their goldfish, as in it will die. Even up to their cats and their dogs, red frangipani is very important to be using along with the fringe violet because of the shock of the death. Okay, and that's for little people who might actually moving house. They may be staying at the same school, but they may be moving house, so the loss of their room as they move into their new room. Like little people, they attach so differently to what we perceive, and so it's really important that even if you don't know whether they are attached differently, doing the fringe violet and the red frangipani, for example, if you're moving house, is a great remedy for them, just as a general. Or you might spray it like around in their new house or spray it in their new room as such, okay, so that you can dissipate that possible loss. But loss for everybody else, red frangipani needs to go in, and it is always attached with fringe violet in that first one.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. So they're the main ones for the loss aspect that I'd like to mention today anyway.
And sadness, for sadness?
Loss and sadness, yes, absolutely.
How about fear?
Yes, fear's a good one. Okay, so we have grey spider flower, which is for quite the terror, the real phobia that paralyzes you, that fear that paralyzes. So for extreme anxiety. A lot of people say, for example, they might be a great singer, great musician, but they have an extreme fear about going out onto the stage and they just cannot do it. There's lots of movies, obviously, surrounding those sorts of stories. Grey spider flower is absolutely fantastic for that. For me, that's probably the one I use the most for it. I'm going to stop for a second.
That's fine.
Right?
Yep.
Hang on, because I know there's one more, and I'm just going to quickly have a look. Okay, so the fear aspect, just to understand as well, so we've just done the terror. The fear aspect is often you can, as a practitioner, you can talk underneath that. And what I mean by that is you can talk through and find out what it is that one might actually be fearful of, okay, if that makes sense. One of the other essences I do use, however, and it's for courage, which, you know, we need in the face of adversity, and sometimes that's fear, is dog rose. And dog rose is a wonderful essence, more of that acute, as I said, acute essence for courage in the face of fear. So anyone who might be even just going to an exam, going and taking a driving test, as my son had to do last week, that you can utilise dog rose to actually give courage. So that's probably a really good time right now, Sandy, to actually say that essences are not just used for what we would probably consider the negative emotions or the yin sort of emotions. They're also, you can use them to get something, as in to give something, to receive something. So as we just said, to receive courage or to find and trigger your courage, you use dog rose, and that's a very yang positive aspect of the essences.
Yeah, I love that. A bit of a prophylactic almost.
Yeah, yes. Yes, look, it can be utilised for that. If you know your kids and yourself, if you know you're going into a situation and you know your past cycle of behaviour, then yes, you can certainly use it as a prophylactic type of treatment. Absolutely. That's why rescue remedy and emergency essence is so good, because you just have it in your bag with you. And you can use it for someone who's just fallen over, someone who's about to walk in to a job interview. It's just there, and it just gives you all of it, all in one hit. And again, so simple. Don't need to know the sciences. You just need to be self-aware.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Okay, so that was fear and phobias and obviously courage, which so there's those remedies for that. Now, anxiety. You did touch a little bit on anxiety when you spoke a little bit about.
Yeah, let's do that. So worry is a big thing for a lot of people, and I don't know about you, but I have found that over the last 20 years, worry has definitely increased in our world. Certainly over the last couple of years, with what we've all had to deal with lockdowns, etc. There's a lot of worry these days that people ruminate over. So we'll go with the two that I use for that. Crowia, which is a really fun one to remember as well, like the impatiens and the bark flowers. Crowia is for worry, so warrior, crowia. So it's an easy one to remember that way for the practitioners. Crowia is quite specifically for worry. So if you're worried, again, about that driving test and you need the courage, you put your crowia and your dog rose together, if that makes sense there. Yeah. Let's move straight then to the ruminating one, which is Baronia. So this is for obsessive worry, obsessive thoughts that can actually keep you awake at night. So Baronia is one that if you're treating somebody for insomnia and you're using your herbs for that, you can pop Baronia in for sleep, to help that sleep, to keep the mind at a calmness. Baronia is also for those, as I said, those obsessive thoughts. So we talked earlier before about the cyclic aspect and frustration with family. Then if that is something that just keeps coming up and up and up in your consultations with somebody, or up in your life if you're self-prescribing, then Baronia is a great one to actually add. In relationships, we usually add Baronia and Illawarra flame tree if there has been a continual pattern of even with one person, or with continual patterns of all relationships, of you're the one that's being broken up with, and then you obsess over that person, or you can't sleep, etc. You might even go back to that relationship, and then you get broken up with again, and so you're ruminating all the time. So that is Baronia for that particular reason as well.
Okay. Now, you may have touched on teariness within the deep sadness remedies, but is there more specific remedies for, teariness, that constant, I suppose it does fit in with the deep sadness, but it might be more of an acute situation?
So that's probably more the red super frangipani that we went over for the loss.
Okay.
And also, again, going in that underlying questioning of what, where's, why, and what's happening when the teariness is coming. So if it's while we're thinking about the relationship, then we're looking at the relationship issues. If it's thinking about the family, then we're looking at the family essences to use. That being said, let's look at communication.
Okay.
So communication is bush gardenia. And this can be used, this is a great one to use as a practitioner as well. So if you're starting out as a practitioner and you're a little bit nervous about asking your questions, might be in clinic, or you might be your new clinic that you're starting out, bush gardenia is a wonderful essence to actually just spray around your consultation room. Great for you to be taking internally for a couple of weeks as well while you're going through your clinics at uni or at college, or even when you're just starting out. It's fantastic because it helps you to find that bonding on how to communicate with the person in front of you. So if that's your client, then that's fantastic. You can start in with all your questions. If it's, for example, you're going for an interview, bush gardenia is great to actually utilise that way as well. If you've got your 2-year-old having tantrums because they can't actually get their thought pattern down to their actual mouth, and they can't get those words formulated and out, they can think it, but they can't say it, which is what a 2-year-old tantrum is usually about, then giving them bush gardenia or spraying that around, absolutely fantastic to actually help them and to help you to just keep calm and to allow them the time to formulate the words to actually come out.
Okay, awesome. I am going to go take some bush gardenia because I feel like since having kids, the words are in my head, but I can't get them out of my mouth. So absolutely. Probably a big postnatal one as well, I think. Heaps of mothers lose their words and what am I trying to say? So, yeah. Yes.
Absolutely. And while we're on mothers, shea oak is
I was about to ask about shea oak. Go on.
Terrific. We're now thinking here. Yep. So shea oak is fantastic. So it's a great one for balancing hormones. So we talked about the red helmet orchid with regards to menarche and menstruation, if it's quite specifically to deal with male issues and any disruption there. But shea oak is utilised also for regulating menstrual cycles. But let me say that it's actually, the way I use it, is more for those that actually need to get in touch with their female side. So if, for example, you feel like you're more of a tomboy, you've always been really sporty, or you've always just hung with the boys or that sort of thing, and the menstrual cycle's just been an absolute, disruption to all of that, then you're starting to want to get pregnant. All of a sudden you found the person you wish to be with and you wish to actually have a baby. Shea oak helps to actually find that softness and that vulnerability and that nurturing that is within each one of us, but quite specifically innately within females themselves. And so it helps you to then create the hormone balancing that you need to actually get pregnant or to balance out that menstrual cycle, or again to find that within you, that softness of that female nurturing side, that giving side that females do naturally. So she oak's a wonderful essence for that.
Very, very much a yin essence, where the red helmet orchid is the yang essence.
Absolutely, even in colour. Absolutely.
Oh wow, so good. There has been so much shared. I don't even know where to go, because I think it's awesome everything you've shared. Is there anything that we haven't mentioned around emotions that you'd like to add in before we?
Yes, definitely. Can we add in, just for everybody, I did quickly mention 5 corners before, which is for self-confidence. It's a really great essence as a general essence for everybody as such, because we all lose our confidence I keep mentioning the things like going for an exam for kids, going for an interview for adults and stuff, but anything where you might need a little bit of confidence to actually push you to do it. We talked about marriage and relationships breaking up. You may need the confidence to go back out and just be even with your friends and go out with your friends. That 5 corners is fantastic for those sorts of things. Can I please also mention 2 more?
Absolutely.
One I'd like to mention is sundew. Sundew is a really wonderful essence. It's actually for procrastination quite specifically. Again, with this very fast-paced world that we find ourselves in, we also almost berate ourselves with not keeping up with so many people that we might see on Instagram, etc., doing a million trillion things. If we're feeling like we're procrastinating, or if we're feeling like we're not quite sure where to start, again, this helps especially with the teens, in getting started on, say, for example, an English assignment, or even just starting in on their study routine. Sundew is a wonderful essence to spray around the house or to get them to take internally. Okay, so that's a really good one for the family. The last one I really want to mention, I think it's a really nice one to finish up on. It's actually Philotheca. And Philotheca is not an overall well-known one or anything like that, but I love it because for me it sort of reflects how I feel my purpose in this life is. And it's actually to have your back. It's for support. It's to make sure that you feel that you can do it. So it's, for me, I call it the I Can remedy, or the I Can essence. And I love it because it just helps people if you've got a client that just isn't feeling like they're just not up to the task. If you've got a client that is constantly saying, oh, I can't do that, or I couldn't do that, Philotheca is the one that you want to pop in there for them. It's an essence where they'll start to feel supported. They'll find that support. They'll actually see that they are supported and actually see it consciously. And then they'll see that people are there that have their back. And I think that's a wonderful essence to actually finish our podcast on, but also just to give to people, because it's not one that is, as I said, well known or very much used in the mixtures and stuff like that.
Oh, so good to know. And I love it. I love everything you've said today, and I really think it's so important for practitioners to brush up on their flower essences, because in Chinese medicine, we have a way of dealing with emotions through, the meridians and whatnot. But in naturopathy, flower essences were really the emotional aspect being addressed. And we need to treat people holistically, because emotions manifest as physical symptoms. And Absolutely. So, everything that you've just shared today can be used for women, males, children. I personally have a remedy I want to go make up for everyone in my family, just from what you shared. And I'm sure anyone listening will be like, great, yeah, I need this and I need that too. So it's just been so awesome. I just want to ask one thing on the dosing. So you've explained, I always say it's good to keep next to your bed, then you can do it night and morning as soon as you go to bed and waking up. Now, how long are we doing the remedies for? Or the essences?
Excellent. Yes, we didn't cover this. Thank you. So 2 weeks is usually the way that you want to do it initially. And so usually we will see our clients and then 2 weeks later we'll see them again, so that then they'll have finished their essence and then we can see what other issues may have come up from that. Can I mention here what's really interesting is that clients will either take them away for the weekend, for example, if they're going away for the weekend and they'll remember to take them. That's a double thumbs up. That's great. Others will leave them at home because they'll totally forget them, and that will tell you a story as well. The other part of the story, which I think is so just fascinating, is that the ones that might take that away, all of a sudden the actual bottle gets dropped or broken. And so the essence actually doesn't get taken for the whole 2 weeks. That tells you a story straight away. That is, did I put something in wrong? Did the person actually, was the energy already, has it just been realigned already after 2 days, 3 days, 5 days? Like, don't ever think that that's a bad thing or that you just have to redo it again. Don't get upset with your clients if that's the case. It just means that, wow, it wasn't needed anymore. And what do we do from here? And that's a really important thing for practitioners to know as well.
Well said. I always think that with needles when they fall out. I think, well, that point is done.
Yes, absolutely. It's exactly it, Sandy. Yeah. Great.
Oh, this has been so good, Kayla. I cannot thank you enough for sharing your wealth of knowledge, and I'm so glad that, we connected after 15 years or something.
Yes.
And I was just saying I'm going to get all my other lecturers back on. I've had some of my Chinese medicine lecturers come on. It's just so good to have you share your beautiful wealth of knowledge. So thank you again.
Thank you, Sandy. It's been an absolute pleasure to see you and speak to you and to share this information with all of your people. So have a wonderful rest of the day.
What an awesome episode that was with Kayla sharing her knowledge on flower essences. I really hope you enjoyed that podcast. I just wanted to announce that I have my online children's health course now available, Wild Bloom. This is a naturopathic and Chinese medicine course for raising children naturally. It's from postnatal health all the way through to young teens. We cover nutrition, gut health, what to do after antibiotics, Chinese medicine and tools you can use from Chinese medicine, and much more. There's a whole module on just ailments themselves. So when your child is sick, you can go and look up that ailment and find some natural remedies to apply before having to rush to the doctor. To get $50 off that course, use the code BLOOM at the checkout, and that's available at my website, herearthmedicine.com. I also have my Shoni Shin pediatric health tools now available. They are worldwide shipping for free, and they are also available at my website. So if you'd like to use these tools as part of your daily wellness ritual with your children to help them sleep, have better digestion and immunity, go and check them out at herearthmedicine.com. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I really hope you enjoyed this. Online, simply go to sandyrosshealth.com.